We're at the very end of Revelation chapter 3 today. We've looked at the messages to these different churches. There's one left.
อันนี้ตอนนั้นเป็นไม่ตอนนั้นมันเป็นไม่ทอกเดอแต่เดี๋ยวเราจะมาดูเสียวก็ให้มาตอนนั้นมันเป็นไม่ได้มาสระกูโซซอนต์เมย์นอชโลต์เมย์
So here, Yeshua has been giving a message to each of these 7 churches.
นี่เด้อสระอยู่บนตัวผู้เนี่ยมาเด้ออาเชื่อแค่เอซีมาสระกูลอบลีเป็นไม่โอนะเป็นไม่สระกูตัวเมย์นะตัวเมย์นะมาไม่ใช่นะเด้อไอโชว์เปเบอร์ไอเชื่อแค่บาเคนนะมามีทอดเทคเครตนะเป็นสิ่งนี้เจนะก็
And we've learned that these churches also represent the church, the state of the church, in different parts of church history.
นี่เด้อสระกูตัวเมย์เป็นแม่นะมาเด้อเบียร์ใส่ชุดครีอาซูเฮลีซีก็มีเตเนี่ยมาซีเบชื่อนะเด้อคริปปูซีตัวเด้ออาซูเฮลีกูนะมาไอโชว์เปก็เด้อเตเชื่อแค่เบอร์สระกูตัวเมย์เคทอดใครเตกันเนี่ยเชื่อแค่เบอร์นั่นเคque é missa em crispo cinema senada lop liban a shaka si roku cinema crispo cinema asi shine pe asinga
So the last message to this church this is called the church at Laodicea, the place of Laodicea.
ni da sraku national te me so sa te me ma elu amina da Laodicea
Yeshua says some things about this church that are not good.
ni da liku bia se shukri asu he na ma a he da sraku te me ri ka cinema a to asana da a hish asana bia se shukri a holu asana da esi te susi olana
Actually, as with many of the other churches, he had some good things to say. He has nothing good to say about this church.
Ni da pe me ka kya sa da sraku da ra ke so san de me so san ha da bia shi ku te me na ma a he pa la da esi sraku te me na ma mi red ne ne ite esi na ma ji sho ne ba te na ai sho pa ko he ma na da no sho la te me na ha da esi me to resi na ha bia shi ku he pa no te chu
In chapter 3, could you play verse 17?
benin da te le chama du sio ma pu sakhu
va duza chasero va lupa chot chotu va luititene a ulo cho ho ne he cho pu ne du ro ne se plesezo le sezo klabenine ne sofa surya ne meseki ne ukaklu choro ne sanyi ni de ne to.
So this church is happy with itself, happy with what it's doing.
me te da sraku te me na ko he esi lopli no ha ami da si sraku me te ma mu la de ai na ko sana lo pa te chu to he no
It is very comfortable in working with the world.
da ami te me te na da he khu ta ba si sana da a khu be so si na he khu pu si no ha mu la de ha ai na ko
They are comfortable. They are actually somewhat rich.
esi na mu re ga la de ha to pa esi na sana posa sana da adu ye ga ki
But Yeshua said, you do not understand that inside you are poor.
mananda bia se jikri a helo na ma hina order si te ne na da si mu re ga la de ha si du ye ga si ru ga de ha si te ne ba mana si me da si splok ne ma si singi ga la du to ko mana si na ma sana si ukreve sana si te tati si no to
Instead of understanding about the faith and what is going on in the world, Yeshua says, you are blind.
ni da bia se jikri na helo na da esi sar ku te me na wa a me ga ki si da ro si to sana ona adne ka betu da ni me na ha sana bia se jikri na helo na da esi na ona si splok ki lopli
Instead of your people being clothed with the righteousness of Yeshua, he says you are naked
แต่ว่าเห็นนะเดซีคริปูซีเตเฮซินมาอีเตซีเอซินเนคริปูว่ามันนะเดซีอโปสาสนะซีโอกากโลเมเตเฮเนมาสนะซีกุเซบีสนะเดเบียเซชุคริฮัจจาซีโตซีซินดิซินฮะซีมีเรสนะเดเบียเซชุคริโตเห็นละ
This church is filled with so many unbelievers that Yeshua says he appeals to them to come to him.
มีแต่เดสระกูตมีนอับเดอุปจิจมแรงโลโตเอ็นเนี่ยนะก็ให้เป็นเคเบียเซชุครินะสนะอกุยซิโยจะซีสนะเดอิติเฮก็เสดว่าคัลเลเฮเมทก็เสเวะเฮลุง
Would you play verse 20?
เป็นดามาพูนชนนเซ
Ê đà là hia, vã cái thầu biết cái đa nhi hia rồi vã đồ cái đa ye, cái ya tập về cái ní khờ vã đồ cái đa kia rồi, ba mô sự nữa, vã cứ hia nữa ít đâu cứ na lo cứ ít đâu cứ na vã pa.
Here, Yeshua is inviting them to come to him and be saved.
นี่คุณแน่นมาเด้อเบียเซชุคริสินะไอเอเฮเอซีก็ชนะเด้อเฮดอกเวกดาเวมิมูปิสิปาเฮอาซิเอเฮเนี่ยเอซีเด้อมิเตเนมาซิโนนี่ก็เอซีเด้อเตมิสิเปลกกะ
Over the years, I have many times used this verse to invite people to come to Yeshua.
นี่เด้อสร้างเงินนะว่าโอนะไอเบชิกยสิเนมาไอโชติติลูเด้อว่าเป็นดาบุนตุกโลนก็ให้มาดูเดมาพูนเชมิเตเฮเนมาเดเบียเซชุครินะว่าอาซิเอเฮลอปลีฮิกูฟูซิก็ให้เอเฮลอปลีเด้อเบียเซชุคริกระดากูย
Things are pretty bad in a church when Yeshua has to ask the people to come to him and be saved.
มินะเป็นนี่แม่ก็ให้เด้อสระกูตมีนะมาอะไรตัวบัตเตเอสิตสึดูจะบัตเตกันเนี่ยเตเบียเซชุครินะว่าสนะเอติเดือสิเด้ออเบเฮเมทัลชิกเซเด้อเบียเซชุคริเด้อกระดามูทืนพู
Now, I want to remind us once again that the messages to these churches very wisely and cleverly, Yeshua also says that we also understand that these churches represent different times in church history.
นี่มันนั่นเป็นเบตมาก็เห็นเด้อเบียเซชุคริอาซูเฮลีสระกูตมีเตอันนอมีแค่ลุยเตสนะเฮแค่สิตซึไม่เตคินมาอันเบชเห็นนะเด้อเฮเบชิวตืสระกูตมีมันตัวก็เห็นสนะไอเบชิลุนมาลบลีสระกูโอปาเดอร์บอาเชื่อแค่บันคินก็สนะเด้อมันนี่เป็นแม่เด้อสระกูลาวเดซีนะก็เอซีนะอโมเรกเลยดื้ออดูเยกเลยดื้อลูกปฏิเจอตัวเฮคินมาอุเฮนะตืสระกูตมีลาวเดซีมาตัวก็เห็นเด้อเชื่อแค่ตะทอกโกยตื่นแล้วคุณเนี่ยคิดมาลอบลีอิเตเดสระกูคิดมาอัตนิแค่มีอัตนิเซมินนะ
So here we see what churches look like at the end of church history.
มีนะเด็กเป็นแม่เด็กเตสระกูแต่เมนะมาเป็นสิ่งเงี้ยนะเด็กอาสนะสระกูคิดมาอาสนะเบสนะเชื่อแค่มาถูกแกก็อาสนะเด็กอโคยายาเจ็บตัวก็
As Yeshua looks down today at churches in the world, he is seeing us today.
มีแต่มาคุณเนี่ยเคเบียสิครีมแมกเลเดอร์ฮิคูฟูซีสระกูซีเนี่ยมาไม่เท่าไปมาติครีฟูซีที่ก็ฉะนั้นเป็นคุณเนี่ยเนินก็
Today, Yeshua is looking down and seeing churches like this.
มีแต่เนี่ยมาคุณเนี่ยเคแต่เนินมาเด้อเบียสิครีมแม่ตาก็ฮิคูฟูซีเด้อสระกูซีเนี่ยมาไม่เท่าชื่อเด้ออูตัวนี้แค่เส้นอะไรมาอีดีมาเป็นสิ่งนี้เด้อมันสระกูสุดสันต์เป็นมีนะก็เฮ
Not all of them, but a great many of them.
นี่คุณเนี่ยตันเนอร์ซีนะมาอีเตเอาเอลเลอร์จะก็เอาเอลเลอร์เอซิสระคุณมาเห็นนะเด้ออันลูปฏิจจโตเอซีอีเตสนะอันดูเยกดูเฮอันนี้ไม่รอบเลยเอาเอลเลอร์ก็คุณเนี่ยตันเนอร์ซี
This is the church. This is the church age where many churches have turned from the Bible and turned from the faith.
มีแต่เด้อเป็นแม่เด้อเชื่อแค่เด้อสระกูสุดสันต์เป็นมาเป็นแม่เธอเชื่อแค่ว่า ite krifusi te hesi hekufusi te hesi no ha sana de pa ke bia se jukri de la tengo si chomle de la tengo si ko he esina asana de a te ju esine ma a de ke lo pli ha.
Before this time, a person could walk into most churches, not Catholic churches, but most Protestant churches, and would hear the gospel being preached.
Me te ne ma da ke ne pe me ka kha se da ta ko ya bi kha ke no go ne ma ke ne ke te pre a chao le ite sroku asi chao ku cho be ga sroku si o he pa na na ma da puki sroku pa le to ko he da ke ne ke te pre no ha a ku no si ate ku cho be ga sroku te me ku ne ma ba sroku te me na ma ai swa ga de ha ma da chom la te la tengo ko.
Not so now.
Mana ku ne atna na ma ke ne si no da sroku te me ne ma asi
Churches maybe their buildings may be large, there may be wealth there, and they may be doing many things.
Me kene pe meta na ma sra ku si na ma ona me du me thu si to na te na ma esi sana ani e ne bi sha si esi du ye ka a he na ko na to ba so je no ma da si sra ku no a me ka me he te je si.
But many of these churches, you will not find believers, you will not find people spreading the gospel.
Ni una pe meta ba na ba te pe ko he si de so ko ma do thu si ru to ne de si me ga me he ne de pe ku si u pu ma si u class ni ko pe meta ba te pe ko he de si meta to si ne ma de krifu ni ne si ku cho be so si ma o to ko.
The world may think that many of these churches are doing a fine job, but Yeshua does not think so.
Nigena hiku fusi me sraku hu klasi ne ma tne na da sraku si te ne ma krifu ma ine ne ki ya tne me na ma da ya shishkrit ne ma ko de go ha sana krifu si ma pa to o cheka to.
So where did this drifting away from the faith, where did it start?
Me na da pe si nge go ha da hiku fusi te he si no ma mi mate a sabate khete da esi asana da apata ton ne pa da bia se skri te la tango si ton.
More than a century ago, the seminaries where the schools where pastors would be trained, those schools began to question the Bible.
Da asabate khete ne ma pe me ka khasa da ma ba ta tho ko ya khe ma na ko he da me te da srakusi da chokusi na ko he chokusi na ma da u iswa te ke yesi da abe thwana pastor si te he na ko he I da sra chokusi hu class na ona atne ke sa ko he da esi iswa ma pastor si ai swa lu da te chomre te la ngo si na ma ai mi mete ai iswa lu te asna te ne ka khasa hu ko.
Just as the serpent, Satan, said to Eve, did God really say that?
Ne sananda petne ke sada hikutulu akena ko heda ba pisulu no ha be chuna da promo I uno ko he a hiluna da o ma da nei show na ma bia se chamre na mai show ni ne ne na.
That same serpent had placed into the heart of these school professors, school teachers. Did God really write this? Is it all true?
Like as schools and as in like
the schools that teach, that train pastors.
Okay. Ma mena hasana da ma pislu a he shude ma mo I uno ko he asana da chumre hini ne men ne tin suwe a shude mi uno ko asana huna ha da ba pe me ka kya da ta thoko ya khin ma da esi sana da ma u hina da puki chokusi e tomne be kha chokusi e ma da ai swap recrusi thwa pastor si the no ko he da u pray swap pastor si the no ha ona tin ke kya sana order ma lis pe swap lu no ma sana da lisana ma hini ne huna e tomne petin ni su e atin ke kya sana.
And so soon these men were coming out of the schools and becoming pastors of churches.
Mena da te prekusi te hisi te thua cho iswa no be hada thaka pastor cinema te chammi te mea ga.
And so these pastors and these churches began to question the truth of the Bible.
Mena sa na mi te asada pada cho ku ke no go heda esi sra I preswa da pastor si te he no ha ona ahina da lisa iswa no mai swani ne tumne da esa su pe be atne mi lo pli no go sana de ma pastor si no hani ani ho mena no ha sara esi chammi ka de ha esi sra ku te me se ne ma esi so hangi gloss no go sana da ahina da the lisa ku ai swap no ma toki ni no.
This was no surprise to Yeshua.
Nada biasa shu ni ma asana da ametha na ma ite ase ma to asana asingi to go de thwami anpa.
Would you play 2 Thessalonians? This is Kupalo. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3.
The second Thessalonian?
Yes.
Chapter what?
Chapter 2 and verse 3.
Okay. Ama pe mani dada Thessalonian ni ba ma dunia ma pusio.
No ilo iliani tesine temeni ya te Yeshua ya tia hitonu kaya te kusa si chomria paro kaya da te si kya chomria na chomria ate su te si anitapre ku ulio chapa te ite he ku tu tia rete paro ya te Yeshua ya kisia pa mongi inu Akuya tucha no pa. Turo tomria kume piplukia. Kaya jiri janu te preda ngara kupa. Lord.
I don't know how that translates that in the Quran, but in the English, Kupalu says there will come a falling away from the faith. A moving away from the faith.
Ahina shashua ma hedi azana da kupalu na hina da hikusti te hina ma azana da biasa shukri au pua kena ma sana da adeke ko sana au ta na biasa shukri pa na ahimino ko It doesn't say falling away. It's more like they will have like a fight. Yeah. They will fight against Jesus.
Oh, okay. They will. Okay. Well, that's a general idea there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is not the only place. There are several places that talk about in the Bible that talk about the moving away from the faith by churches.
Ninda kupalu ahiba kenama ahina dana keba mada he kupusi nama asana esi opu ite Jesus hopana da jamre tala tangu to pa ahina basana tana keba makaye ite chot phake da jamre te so isyana pa ahina.
You know, the next thing to happen on God's timetable is when believers are caught up into the clouds to be with him.
Nizana da pimme ma sure ke so son po no go head the no sure sure ke ba ma the na ke da de bia shi no I can tell up kripusi no.
But when true believers are gone, these churches and these people are still going to be here because they are unbelievers, many of them.
Ani me na de da me te da pe kripusi pe ji jomre lango so te hi na ma pe te ka thoda ma ku ba ke na ma au ke he ku no ma shu shu da u pe ji jomre ngo to no ko he.
And these churches and these people will move even farther away from the faith than they are now.
Me na ba na ke me te kripusi o pa to ke ne ma asi te krima to te hi na asi kun ne na ma sana aji pa to da jomre ngo to a pa pa li sa si to ma na sa no ba ke pe ke the thoda ma ku ne ma asi ba na ke na ma o to pa le ya pu je da bia se shri jomre ta la tangom ka.
If you read this, what Yeshua says in chapter 3, He says he is so disgusted with what he sees that he wants to spit them out of his mouth.
In chapter 3
Yep.
da bia shi kriya hida madu sino go ahina mimete ya methara hi kupusi ya emena sana deke lopli chumre tala tango si ya ji shop to no hasana methana amu men nep lungi no hasana chana asi uthege cha asi cha huno ga sana ali si swap asi to chano.
But I'll let you read that on your own in chapter 3.
Munanda ite sra si methashida si parle de bago hemada ite amadusio.
So now we're going to look at chapter 4, and things change a great deal now.
Not are we in Thessalonians?
No, in Revelation.
Oh, kunne be meg senda ma dele le tia go he. Me madusio ma si parle de go.
Yeah,
Kunne na be meda madului.
The chapter 3 I was talking about was Revelation chapter 3.
Anida sra hera madusio si parle de ma de le tia madusio si parle de go.
Yeah, where it talks about this church at the end of the chapter.
Okay. Naman ban up kin ma da ahi be chena da sraku sorsan me weluna Laodicea.
So something different happens now in the 4th chapter of Revelation.
Kunne be meda madului de le tia madului na ma ahi asana da thako ko ke go.
Would you play, this is chapter 4, would you play verse 1 and 2?
Kunne be min da madu te na ni.
Te ye te he thuro wa ma thi lu o ni po te aru de che de mo khunu ka da te be lu mo o ro wa ni khu te pra cha de che ro a pra fya na ko pra phu wa ni khu thu ho de ka lu khe ne ro a he be wa ro a he na cha de ye de he thu cha thu pa ro kriya ma te be thu cha ku pa ne wa ku di lu pin ne ye de phu ro chom re a fe cha se pu ma de phu pu ma wa ro de mo khu ne cho phya a khu kya the thya le u de me ro u o nya o de a khu ne de pre.
So we have looked, Yeshua has given us a look at all of church history, and now a voice says to Johann, come up here.
Ni kunne da ona pe me thoga de da te sraku susan te me ko no ga he na kunne ke pe be pini ho na ma da moku no wa hi be shu na da kupalu no ga hi lu na da ka the ba ai shu.
And here the voice says, I'm going to tell you now what things will happen after this.
Mina wa da moku na te pre na wa ai shu lu na kunne na ma be shu ga san ne da shipa ma shanu ba ke na ma tha the me te krete ba ne the thor moku na ke na.
Now, Johann is not the first one to go to heaven and see and hear things.
Tum ne wa he kupalu ma ku yo ha. I mean, I said the wrong one. I'm so used to Paul that I was saying Paul.
No, I'm talking really about Johann and Kupalu.
Okay.
Yeah. Here, Johann is told to come up into heaven.
Ni kunne pe mena ma da ku yo ha ko he da mo ku no a hi chulu na da ka the da mo ku na ai no.
But in one of Kupalu's letters, he said that he also at one point went up into heaven.
Ba ku palu na ite da ara li ku ke na ma au ta hu ko he da mo ku a hi chulu na da ka the da mo ku na a hi ka lulu ko.
But Kupalu said, the things that I heard, I am not able, it is not lawful, it is not right for me to say, to tell people about those things.
Munanda ku palu no a hina oda veni ho lopli da chamrai be shi be da mo ku ai shwe lopli si ne ma sana da a su a to ke da ve lui sho lopli ga hi ku pu si na ai na.
But Johann is told to record the things that he sees and he hears.
Munanda ku Yohana ma da ite u pre sho lu na hina da ne ni ho lopli si ne me tholopli si ne ma ratama lopli ai sho lu.
Now, we've gone through looking at these churches But now, strangely, we hear after this chapter 4, we hear nothing more about the church until the end of this book.
Ni ona da pe mera he kuchulu ma du tangi na siono ha ai show lopli pe da ke che ke da sroku wa kinama mi to te crate ai show lopli pe ko ha mana da ona pe mera ma du lui no ha ai show lop no show ka ba ma du lui na ma ko ba da sroku ri kya si no ha ai show pe te che to ai show pe pa da ide he ma da te de cha ma du no show lo ta ma ko.
After chapter 4, we will see chapter after chapter of the judgment that is coming upon the earth.
Mitene ma da ma du lui ya to ke kinama da ma du nya tu da no show lo kinama una ai show pe da ite he ku kinama chomre chi ria he ku mi te klo te na ba show pe ai show pe no the he ko.
But we hear in these chapters nothing about the church until towards the end of the book, Yeshua comes.
Mina da te madu nya tu da sana da no show le te de le cha madu no show le ma ne ma da ite sra ko re ke asina pe ni ho te to ko una pe ni ho da no show le ma me ba bia se kri akle ka se da he ku akina ba.
Now, to understand what is going on here, we need to stop and we need to refresh our memory again about the two comings of Yeshua.
Mina da una pe sisingi ka me mete da madu lui ya thoa ke na ma da sana sra ko ari kya sina ma e sa pa pe to mete ne ma sana da pe bi ko le ko he sana pe bi me ka kya ka se da ba ite be sana da bia se shikri ya kle da he khun pa na hu ba ta hu na wa mi te sana I see show pe te na pe me ka kya sa ba na ko.
And I mean the two future comings.
Ni da sra he da bia se shikri akle ka se na hu pa na ma da ite da ra ke ma le to ko he da bi hangi ba ko sana pe me thale to da li sa ku te de le cha no ai show pe ko da bia se shikri akle da he khun ma akle na hu pa ai no.
The first coming is when Yeshua comes down into the clouds and calls us to him.
Ara lo tu bia se shikri akle akena ma akle upo pe da allo khun bo he ba na ke akle to da allo khun ne ma e ka the pe kripusi the me thashu lo da allo khun.
So when the judgments are coming upon the earth, we believers, the church believers, are in heaven with Yeshua.
Mena da ba ite chamre chi re lo pli he ku ta ba ke ne ma da pe kripusi akena pe the ko de da ma khu da o de na chamre na bia shikri ko.
So we're running out of time. We will talk about this next week and go on to talk about other things in this chapter. But we need to understand the two comings.
Mina kun ne na chi o to ba ma da ite chan no ta pa ma pe me pa ko he da ba no pa na ma bia se shikri akle da he ku akena ma kle na hu pa na ha ngola chai te sena da lisa ko madu luina madu nya sina e chu krai te pe sim me pe pa me ko.